Okay, it's never a dull day when you cover the news for a living. There are so many big stories going on. To help me go through this, I have Jimmy Dore with me. Jimmy, thank you for joining me again.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Jimmy is a comedian. He's also covered politics for many, many years. He is a YouTuber and a Rumbler like myself, so I'll make sure to put links directly to your channel down below. Want to get your thoughts right away. I feel like the government is lying to us. They are gaslighting us. What do you make of these mystery drones over New Jersey? President Biden, the White House, Homeland Security, they're all saying, we don't know what this is. President Trump is saying they know exactly what it is, but won't tell the truth. And other people are saying there's missing radioactive material. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, this is one of those cases where I tend to believe Trump. He was president of the United States, and he said that, believe me, the military knows exactly where these things are coming from. And then you hear, these ridiculous excuses that are actually angering elected officials, right? So not like local city council people, but U.S. senators are upset and pissed off at the quality of answers they're getting to their questions. And so I heard a mayor of a city said, I had one of these things the size of a car over my house. And so they're pretending like, no, these are just like drones that's the new lie that I heard today. In fact, that they all came together, and the lie is that these are just individual people using drones. There's no really individual people have drones the size of cars. I didn't know that. And and all of a sudden, and anyway, so I think so. Trump says he knows where they're coming from. He knows what the garage. I think that's the word he used. They know the garage it's coming out of. They know where, and so whatever it is, it's not good. It's some kind of nefarious thing that the government. Of course, they're aware. And if they weren't, why wouldn't they shoot them down? What a country that lived through 9/11, you're going to allow dozens of unidentified flying objects around without having an F-15 come by and shoot it out of the sky and see what's going on? Of course they would. And by the way, they've been over military bases. And so the military bases have been reporting that they're there. And then the government says they're not there. They haven't breached the airspace of military bases, directly contradicting what the military is saying. So there's I don't know if the truth will ever come out, what the heck this is about, but this is definitely some nefarious. At first I thought, oh, they're going to try and use this to start the Iran war, because they're trying to start the Iran war. That's the last country on the list, right, from General Wesley Clark. So they've had this planned for over 30 years to do this. It's the Greater Israel Project. And so they're very close to doing it. And so the last one on the list is Iran. And that's what I thought this was going to be about. And they did. There were some people trying to say this is Iran. So they're going to, whatever it is, they're going to use it for nefarious, the worst purpose that they probably can. But yeah, you're being lied. I agree. I tend to believe Trump on this. You're being lied to. The government knows exactly what's going on.
Yeah. The fact that the government isn't willing to investigate it, the government isn't willing to shoot them down. They say we can't track where they're coming from. Of course you can. Just have somebody track it. It would really not be that hard. But there's something, whether this is like a covert military operation, or as I've read online, there's a local government person saying that they now have information that a shipping container with radioactive material came in damaged and broken open, and everything inside is missing. So, I don't know what the actual truth is, but it was scary enough that President Trump said, yeah, you know what? I'm going to stay in Mar-a-Lago. I'm not going to Bedminster. I'm not going to New Jersey. I'm not risking my life before the inauguration.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen those videos of people saying that they're looking for nuclear material. Again, it could be anything. But the obvious thing is that the government is lying. That's what they do, and of course they're lying. When other people who are in positions of power in the government are saying they're lying, then they are.
Yeah. Okay, I want to go back to something that you said, because I remember watching a video from General Wesley Clark many, many years ago, where he said after 9/11, he was called in, I think, to the Pentagon, and they told him, prepare to go to war with 7 different countries. And he was like, why? And they said, just do what you've been ordered, right? And so you mentioned that Iran is the last of the 7. Just yesterday, President Trump was asked at a Mar-a-Lago, news presser, if he would preemptively attack Iran's nuclear facilities. And he said, is this a serious question? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So tell my audience what you know about starting this Iran war. And then do you believe the deep state is going to do everything they can to trip President Trump into a war with Iran?
Yes. Let's answer your second question first. Yes. That's exactly what this is about. That they've been trying to overthrow Syria for decades, and they pretended it was an Arab Spring, which was, again, completely manufactured by the CIA, called Timber Sycamore. They gave over $1 billion to, terrorists to go start uprisings in these Arab countries. And so there's a thing called the Project for a New American Century, which was drawn off by Wolfowitz and Cheney and those people in the 90s. And they wanted to create, and so it was at the end of the fall of the Russian Empire, and they wanted to make sure that they could go in and overthrow and create instability inside what formerly were Russian vassal states. And they had a plan, and the plan was 7 Muslim countries in 5 years. Well, it's taken them much longer. So it was Iran, Iraq, Libya, Lebanon, Syria, I think Sudan, and maybe one more. And so the last one on the list now. So they've done Syria, they did Iraq, they did Libya, Sudan, Egypt. By the way, they also, people don't know about that, but now there was an uprising and overthrow, and then again there's the puppet of the United States, and so the plan was always to try to get Syria fighting against each other along ethnic lines, break up the country, balkanize the country along ethnic lines. Right now, the head of the Al Qaeda is now the head of Syria. That's who we were fighting with and funding in Syria, the Al Qaeda and ISIS. Hillary Clinton admitted that the United States invented the Al Qaeda, and lots of speculations that the ISIS was invented by Israel. And some of the proof for that is that they never attack Israel. Isn't that interesting? And that Al Qaeda and Israel and ISIS are supposed to be sworn enemies, but they never attack Israel. And then they're both on the same side in Syria. It's really interesting. So this seems to be the greater Israel project, and Benjamin Netanyahu, and as Jeffrey Sachs has pointed out, has been behind every one of these wars. And he doesn't make it a secret. There's congressional testimony that I play on my show all the time of Benjamin Netanyahu advocating that he said it's not if we're going to overthrow this Arab countries surrounding Israel, it's when. He said if we overthrew Saddam, it would create stability. If we overthrew Gaddafi, it would create stability. If we overthrew Iran, it would create stability. If we overthrew Lebanon and Syria, it would. So this has all been because, as I know, and my audience knows, that the government does the bidding of Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel, and AIPAC, right? And so what is it for the United States for these wars? Okay, there's maybe stealing some natural resources, but we're also a big oil producer, and people don't know that Iran became a theocracy because they used to be a thriving democracy, a Western-style democracy, and we overthrew Mossadegh, their democratically elected president, because he had a plan to keep the oil for their people. And we were like, no, that's our oil underneath your land. And so the CIA went in and engineered a coup and installed a puppet, which was the Shah. And now of course, blowback. The CIA has a term for what they do. It's called blowback. So they instituted an oppressive dictator, the Shah, and the people responded to that by installing a theocracy. right-wing theocracy. So that's often the case. So now we are saying how bad Iran is because they have this theocracy, yet we're the ones responsible for it. But that is the last on the list, and they've been trying to get a war. And I thoroughly believe now, after how they did Syria, and Ukraine was part of that too. So they was all about weakening Russia so they could get into, part of it was so they could do that because Russia was the people backing up Assad in Syria. And a lot of it has to do with pipelines. A lot of it has to do with the greater Israel project. They've always wanted to have their borders be Turkey and then have a balkanized Syria. And the plan is to have parts of Egypt and parts of Iraq. And so they're getting there. They're on their way, and nobody's going to stop them. And it's weird that the Arab League, Gaddafi warned about this. Gaddafi gave a speech to the Arab League, and I don't know what it was, 2008, 9, and he said, "Why did they do this to you're going to let an Arab leader like Saddam Hussein just get hanged and with no investigation?" He said, "You're going to be next." And Assad is seen on that video laughing, and he was wrong because he was next. So it was Gaddafi was next, then it was Assad, and so that again, the world's terrorists are Israel and the United States and NATO. It's not the people that they tell you in the media who are the terrorists. It's us, and if they are a terrorist, we invented them, and we're probably currently funding them.
There's like this dichotomy of climate change is bad. We need to get off of fossil fuels. At the same time, like more people have been killed in the name of getting cheap oil. It's just like sometimes my brain like struggles to wrap itself around that idea.
You don't think that I also think that I'm not a climatologist or a climate scientist, but I have a pretty good bullshit detector, which is why my show, I think, lends to the success of my show. And when I see people like John Kerry, who flies around in private jets and just bought beachfront property, guys like Bill Gates, who flies around in private jets, Barack Obama takes a trip to Africa and tells the people in Africa, you can't have air conditioners because if everybody here has an air conditioner, the world's going to overheat. And then he buys 3 more mansions, all on the beachfront, one in Hawaii, one in Martha's Vineyard, 48 acres. How many air conditioners do you think Barack Obama's got running at any given time? 40, 50? And then you have people like Zuckerberg, who owns Facebook, always preaching about climate change and how he's an environmentalist. And he just has launched a 280-foot yacht, which is 10 feet shorter than Bezos, another climate change advocate, 10 foot shorter because, he's a man of the people. So that has 6 diesel engines. Zuckerberg's new yacht has 6 diesel engines, but I'm sure it has an electric stove. So my point is the people who are telling us that we got to live in storage containers in 15-minute cities and drive electric scooters and eat the bugs that hit us in the face. Those people are doing that to control us, because if they really thought that jet fuel and carbon created climate change, they would stop flying around the world in private jets. They would stop buying beachfront property because they think the ocean are going to rise, and they would stop running 50 air conditioners and driving 300-foot yachts. So they're not doing any of those things. They're actually doing the opposite. And so the problem isn't Dutch farmers. The problem isn't my gas-powered lawnmower, which they're outlawing here in California. So I don't know what the problem is, but I know the solutions that are being proposed by the elites, people like John Kerry, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Zuckerberg, the Obamas. Those are lies. They're meant to control us.
Yeah. But don't you think we owe it to John Kerry to listen to him because he's rich? That's the only qualification he has. Like, you're rich, you can fly around in your jet. I mean, this guy burns more jet fuel and creates more pollution in one airplane trip than you and I in a lifetime of driving cars.
That's correct.
And we're the bad guy.
And he lied about it. He lied about that they owned a private jet to Congress. And he said, well, I didn't own it. My wife owned it. You slippery slime.
It's registered in my wife's name.
Yeah, you slime ball. My brother's company's registered in his wife's too, so they can now get affirmative action money. That's what everybody does. Everybody knows that game. Oh, it's not my I've never owned one, but your wife does? You son of a bitch. What a sleazeball. And these are the people who we're going to take advice from on how to rearrange and turn our lives upside down because of climate change. He said, in 2009, John Kerry gave a speech where he said in 5 years, the Arctic is going to be free of ice in the summer. Well, that didn't happen. None of those predictions that they made came true. So I'm not listening to them. Whatever they say, I do the opposite. And I bet you'll be okay, because that would have been worked out just fine during COVID. That's for sure. Whatever they said during Russiagate, the exact opposite was true. They were the ones working with Russia to get compromise and smear our president of the United States. So whatever they're saying is true. Probably the exact opposite is true.
Yep, I agree with you. Another opposite is true. What were your thoughts when this purposely held back IG report about January 6th comes out, and wouldn't you know it, not one FBI person, but 26 confidential human informants for the FBI in the crowd, pushing people to go into the building. Some of them went into the building. Some of them are filmed doing vandalism. Then they realize they're filmed, and they're like, "Why'd you do that? Why'd you break that window?" What was your initial reaction to that?
Well, my initial reaction was that those are the 26 FBI informants that they can't deny were there. So there were probably a couple of hundred more that they can deny were there. And so that's the bare minimum that they have to agree or admit to that was there. If you listen to the investigation that the Congress did, and I saw I'm blanking on the congressman's name, but he said that, and he comes from law enforcement, and he's been a congressman for 7 years. He said that they had FBI confidential sources dressed up as MAGA supporters inside the Capitol before the riot ever started. So, and he said his conservative number of how many FBI confidential sources, meaning assets, were there, were over 200. He said over 200. And he said that's a conservative number. Of course it was. And so this was planned. People don't know they did a January 6th in Brazil to get rid of Bolsonaro. It's this exact same playbook. We make it look like you don't accept the election results and you're trying to overthrow the peaceful transfer of power. And then we can deny you to run for president again. They did it to Bolsonaro. And they tried to do it to Donald Trump. I mean, that's exactly what the Colorado Supreme Court said when they kept him off the ballot. They said that he's because of the 14th Amendment, he tried to overthrow the government, and that disqualifies you from running. Well, that, of course, the United States Supreme Court overruled the Colorado Supreme Court, but that was the plan. That was the game. And people don't know this. People don't know that the January 6th was an FBI setup. I mean, if you saw the picture, that's why they never show you the pictures of all the people. There were so many people there, and just a handful of people actually went into them and into the Capitol, and most of them were peaceful. And that's why they don't show you those videos. They don't show you the pictures of the cops going into rooms and then coming back out dressed as MAGA supporters. They don't and they spread the lie that cops got killed on that day. No cop was killed. There's only one person killed on that day, and it was a protester who was shot by Capitol Police. So, and even I have video of the Capitol Police saying we were set up, right? Even the Capitol. Every piece of evidence points out the opposite. And so what I thought about that, I thought that IG report was actually a whitewash. It had to admit that there was at least 26 FBI assets in the crowd, but when there were probably hundreds and hundreds more. And so they made it look like, I didn't read the whole report. I did read some of it. I skimmed a lot of it. What I saw was that they were trying to make it look like an oopsie. Oh, we were just incompetent. The FBI didn't do their job well enough. No, their job was to instigate a riot. That's why there were hundreds of FBI assets in the crowd. And that's why there were FBI assets dressed up as MAGA supporters inside the Capitol before the riot ever started. That's why they didn't have a National Guard there. That's why they knew they had, and as Kash Patel said, if there were FBI assets there, which there were, that meant that they had this plan for months, that you had to infiltrate, and of course they did. So, and when I had Cornel West on my show, and I tried to impress upon him that what was happening, because he said that Trump tried to overthrow the peaceful transfer of power on January 6th, and that's why he's a fascist, which is bullshit that I know he knows is bullshit. And I tried to impress upon him really a bunch of Second Amendment gun nuts decided to go to Washington, D.C. to overthrow the government, and son of a bitch, they all forgot their guns. I bet they were embarrassed. Of course, this is, and I tried to tell them, if they can do this to a former president of the United States, they'll do this to anybody that the establishment doesn't like. And the establishment doesn't like that. A part of the establishment likes Donald Trump. Wall Street likes Donald Trump. The war machine doesn't, and the rest of it doesn't seem to like him. They liked him his whole life. He's been invited on national television my whole life. They all golf together. They all go to each other's third and fourth wedding together. He was given Emmy nominations by Hollywood. Now they say he's Hitler. So what Tucker Carlson says is the establishment was worried that Trump was going to do one less war than Kamala Harris. And I bet that is it. So what I tried to impress about, if they can do it to Trump, they could do it to Cornel West or Bernie Sanders or anybody who is a little bit of a threat or a pebble in the shoe of the establishment. That's exactly, the first thing they try to do is slander you, smear you, discredit you. And when that doesn't work, they try to turn you into a criminal and your movement into criminals. They did the same thing to Bernie Sanders. They said his movement was violent, racist, and sexist. And then when Bernie Sanders started to pick up steam, they said he was being backed by Russia. The exact same playbook they did to Donald Trump. So that's what the establishment does. And that's what January 6th was. And people think I'm some kind of MAGA because I tell the truth about the FBI and January 6th. No, I realize that if they can do just like if they can take the free speech away from Palestinian protesters, they can take free speech away from me. That's why you have to stand up for the speech of everybody. And that's why I have to stand up for MAGA supporters when they're being targeted by the FBI so they can criminalize their political organization.
Yeah, I think it was an assassination attempt on Trump's reputation, right? It wasn't his rally. Somebody else organized it. He was asked to be the keynote speaker. He shows up. They never talk about the fact that he says to peacefully and patriotically march to the Capitol to make our voices heard. And then later we find out, minimum 26 people. We never get any details about the pipe bomb. It's very convenient, everything they leave out. And now they're going, oh, crap, with this report, we've got to let a bunch of people out of jail. We've got to reduce a bunch of sentences. Now Trump's going to come in and release people who literally have been rotting in jail with no due process. So the whole thing is just an absolute catastrophe. But what about this new information out just today? I'm reading that Representative Liz Cheney has been criminally referred by the House GOP for witness intimidation, witness grooming, and then destroying January 6th evidence. Will she actually be held accountable?
Fingers crossed. People make it sound like it's this dastard, like some kind of Gestapo that Kash Patel is going to go in and try to enforce the Constitution and the laws and try to arrest people for election interference or crimes that they committed. She will be protected. I don't see it happening because, again, just like Tony Fauci, right? If when you lie at the behest of the establishment, there's never a price to pay. And so they're going to find a way to protect Liz Cheney, just like they're finding a way to protect Tony Fauci. And he was doing the bidding of the war machine, Pentagon, DARPA, and Big Pharma. So, I mean, there's no bigger, and probably Wall Street at the same time. So he's going to be. So I don't see, even though he lied to Congress twice, by my count, at least that I caught him. I don't think anything's going to happen to those people. And it's all wishful thinking that I think that Kash Patel is going to be able to make a real dent in the establishment. It'll be fun. I think he's going to be an annoyance, but the deep state is called the permanent state because people like Kash Patel come and go and they're there forever. They're the ones who really run things. And so I want things to change. I don't see it happening. I think, America is an end stage republic and we're in a downward spiral and we're ending the way everybody does, overextending on wars while we bankrupt our own infrastructure in our own country. And so it's a sad thing, but I'm trying not to be, people say, oh, you're cynical. My cynicism can't keep up with the reality.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. It's hard not to become black-pilled when you read the news as much as you and I do. Final question, I'll get you out on this. Dr. Peter Hotz, this is the guy that took over for Dr. Anthony Fauci. He's super pro-vaccine, pro-liability for vaccines, super anti-RFK Jr., anti-Trump. He said in an interview recently that major viruses will drop on Trump as soon as he gets in office. Is this a threat? Is this guy a prophet prophesying? Is this him saying if RFK Jr. removes vaccine liability, the whole world will fall apart? What are your thoughts on Dr. Peter Hotz?
Well, Dr. Peter Hotz is a lying, corrupt criminal. And it's easy to prove because I can prove it. I proved it on my show many times. Matt Orfalea has proved it many times with his videos. He says one thing, says the exact opposite. Just like Anthony Fauci says another thing, says that he's constantly going back and forth. And because he wears a white lab coat, people give him, to respect. Like he wouldn't be a criminal. He looks like a munchkin. He wears glasses and he has a white lab coat, just like Bill Gates. He's a nerd. He wears a crew neck sweater and glasses. The devil's gonna have horns when he comes. How do you think the devil's gonna look when he shows up? He's gonna be wearing a white lab coat and glasses or a crew neck sweater. That's what the devil looks like. And so how did he? So it's just like when Anthony Fauci said, "Oh, there's going to be a surprise breakout of a pandemic." Well, that's not a surprise then if you can predict it. That's called a predicted outbreak of a pandemic, and that's because that they knew they were working on gain of function to enhance the coronavirus, and then most likely they leaked it, right, to start this pandemic. Why would you not put that past them? And nobody will say, I wouldn't put it past them. Of course not. They were told to stop doing gain of function. He funds it through EcoHealth Alliance, then lies that he did. And then finally, the NIH admitted that, yeah, we were funding gain of function. So he lied constantly. Nobody ever brings this up in the news. Hey, if the virus came from a lab leak in Wuhan and Tony Fauci was funding it through a CIA cutout called EcoHealth Alliance and then lied about, that means Anthony Fauci's responsible for the pandemic. And nobody ever will say that in corporate news. Nobody. I'll say it on YouTube. I'll say it on Rumble, but they'll never say it on MSNBC or Fox or the New York Times or CNN or Washington Post. That's the exact. But no one will ever say. People are still angry at Joe Rogan, but they're not. He didn't invent the virus. He didn't invent the pandemic. It was invented by Anthony Fauci, and he lied about it. Still, he's still like a saint to what I call the liberal class, which they're not liberal, they're illiberal. They're authoritarian warmongers who are for censorship, and you can't question authority. There's nothing liberal about that. Though the liberal class is now the illiberal class.
Yeah. My favorite thing about Dr. Peter Hotz is he was against Dr. Fauci forcing vaccinations on people until his patented vaccine was approved. And then suddenly he believes everybody should get that, right?
He was the biggest. Well, there's videotape of him giving congressional testimony saying that, we've had a lot of problems with these virus vaccines and you can't rush them. I mean, he starts to name all the problems they've had with the vaccines in the past. And then all of a sudden, as soon as his gets, I was like, oh, no, everybody should take it. It's safe, super safe. And there's video of Anthony Fauci saying it's going to take 10 years to develop this mRNA vaccine. He said it's going to take 10 years. You got to do phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And if everything goes perfectly, it's going to take 10 years. Well, apparently they got it in a couple of months. Yeah. So that's how you know this is they're crooked and they're scammers and there's liars, because all I have to do is show their own words.
Yeah. Jimmy, I know you got a hard out. Thank you so much for coming on. If people want to follow you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I have a Rumble show, a YouTube show. You go to jimmydore.com, Dore spelled D-O-R-E, and I'll see you on tour. I'll be in Honolulu. We'll be in Baltimore. We'll be in Providence, Atlantic City, Cohoes, New York, and many other places. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for those tickets.
Okay. I'll put all those links down below. Thank you for coming on. I hope you have a great rest of your week.
Happy holidays, brother.
You too.